The grand hall shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, the scent of fresh roses mixing with the subtle aroma of champagne. Guests mingled, their conversations a gentle hum beneath the string quartet playing in the corner. Alexander Voronov stood at the altar, impeccably dressed in a tailored black tuxedo. His posture was perfect, his expression calm and composed, but behind the practiced smile, a small tension gripped him. Today was meant to be flawless. His union with Christina, the young model whose elegance complemented his own power and status, was supposed to be the pinnacle of his life. As the music swelled, the doors at the far end of the hall opened, and a hush fell over the crowd. All eyes instinctively turned toward the entrance, curious who would make a grand entrance at a moment like this. And then she appeared, Elena, his ex-wife. She moved with a quiet grace that immediately commanded attention. Her black gown hugged her silhouette elegantly, and her eyes, calm yet piercing, scanned the room with subtle confidence. The air seemed to shift as whispers rippled through the crowd. Alexander's own heart stuttered for a brief moment. He had not expected to see her here, not today, and certainly not like this. But it wasn't just Elena who captured the attention, it was the girl beside her. A teenage girl, standing tall and poised, her gray eyes strikingly familiar, too familiar. Alexander felt a chill as he stared, unable to look away. The resemblance was uncanny. The sharpness in her gaze mirrored his own, and in that instant, a wave of realization washed over him. Christina's perfect composure faltered, her eyes widening slightly, her lips parting in surprise. Murmurs began to ripple through the guests, confusion and curiosity mixing with the quiet shock of seeing the ex-wife of the groom at the wedding. The girl took a slow step forward, her gaze locking onto Alexander. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty, only clarity and a quiet authority in the way she spoke. "Congratulations, Dad." The hall seemed to stop breathing. Conversations died mid-sentence. The orchestra faltered, the notes hanging awkwardly in the air. Guests exchanged shocked glances, and Christina turned pale, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her bouquet tighter. Alexander froze, the words slicing through the perfect veneer of his day. His mind raced, disbelief and astonishment colliding. How could this be? This girl, his daughter. The years that had passed, the life he thought he had led without her, suddenly it all came crashing back with a force he hadn't expected. Elena's calm eyes met his, holding secrets that had been buried too long. Alexander swallowed hard, suddenly aware that nothing would ever be the same again. After the initial shock of the entrance, the ceremony ground to an awkward halt. Guests whispered in hushed tones, some craning their necks to get a better look at the girl who had just called Alexander, Dad. Alexander, still frozen near the altar, felt a strange mix of emotions, disbelief, guilt, and a surprising surge of longing. He hadn't seen Elena in years, hadn't known she had raised a daughter in secret, and now the proof of those lost years was standing right in front of him. Elena approached calmly, her steps measured, as if she were walking into a room she had already claimed. Elisa, the girl, stayed a half step behind her mother, her eyes scanning the crowd with a quiet confidence that belied her age. Alexander's mind raced. Every memory of the past, every argument, every tender moment with Elena, collided with the reality of this unexpected reunion. Christina, sensing the tension, moved closer to Alexander, her hand brushing his arm, trying to anchor him. But the touch felt empty, irrelevant, compared to the storm of emotions swirling around him. Who is she?" Christina whispered, her voice trembling. Alexander could barely speak. Words caught in his throat, replaced by a flood of silent questions. Why didn't she tell me? How could she keep this from me? Elena's gaze softened slightly, but there was a firm resolve in her expression. "Alexander," she began, her voice calm but carrying weight, "this is Elisa. She's your daughter." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. His knees felt weak, and the air seemed to thicken around him. Guests gasped audibly, some murmuring in disbelief. A few instinctively took out their phones, eager to capture the scandal unfolding in real time. Alexander wanted to speak, to ask how, why, and everything he had missed, but all he could manage was a stunned nod. Elisa stepped forward, closing the small distance between them, her gray eyes locking with his. "I've wanted to meet you for a long time," she said softly, yet with a firmness that made the statement impossible to ignore. Her words carried the innocence of a child but also the quiet courage of someone who had spent years understanding a world without her father. Alexander reached out, almost instinctively, but then paused. He was overwhelmed. Part of him wanted to embrace her, the other part was terrified of what this sudden revelation might mean. Elena, sensing his hesitation, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I didn't come to disrupt your day," she said quietly. "I just wanted you to know the truth. She's your daughter, Alexander. She's always been a part of your life, even if you didn't know it." The crowd remained silent, the tension thick in the air. Alexander's mind spun with unasked questions and unspoken apologies. Yet, even amidst the chaos, there was a strange warmth, a sense that perhaps this unexpected moment was the beginning of something he had lost long ago but might now have a chance to reclaim. The wedding reception continued, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. Laughter and music felt hollow, background noise to the storm of emotions swirling around Alexander. He tried to focus on Christina, his new bride, who sat beside him at the head table, her smile forced and fragile. Every time he caught a glimpse of Elena and Elisa across the room, his heart tightened. They were like a mirror of the life he had missed, a life he might have had if choices had been different. Elena moved with quiet composure, speaking politely to other guests but never letting her gaze leave Alexander. Elisa, too, carried herself with surprising poise. She navigated the reception with an elegance that seemed beyond her years, occasionally glancing at Alexander, silently challenging him to acknowledge her presence, to accept her existence. At one point, Alexander excused himself from the head table, slipping through the crowd toward Elena. The guests whispered as he passed, sensing the tension. When he reached them, Elisa stood slightly behind her mother, arms crossed, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and guardedness. I didn't know," Alexander began, his voice catching, betraying the emotions he tried to keep under control. "I didn't know you had a daughter. I should have." Elena held up a hand to stop him. "Alexander, it's not about what you should have done. It's about what we can do now," she said softly, her tone both firm and gentle. "She's my daughter, yes, but she's also yours. And she deserves to know you." Elisa stepped forward, her eyes locked with his. "I don't need excuses, Dad. I just want the truth," she said. Her voice was steady, yet there was an undercurrent of vulnerability that made his chest tighten. Alexander knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "I promise, I'll be there. I want to know you. Really know you," he said, his words careful, weighed with sincerity and a hint of fear. The crowd around them seemed to fade away. All that mattered in that moment was this small, fragile connection forming between father and daughter. Christina, watching from the head table, felt a storm of jealousy and panic. Her plan for a perfect wedding had crumbled, and now Alexander's attention had shifted entirely. Her attempts to maintain control over the situation faltered as she realized that something deeper, more meaningful was happening before her eyes, something she could not manipulate. The rest of the evening passed in a blur for Alexander. He found himself talking quietly with Elena and Elisa, laughing awkwardly at Elisa's witty observations, listening to stories of the years he had missed. Each story was a small revelation, each laugh a tiny thread weaving him back into a family he never knew he had. By the time the reception drew to a close, Alexander's heart was heavy with the weight of regret but also lightened by hope. For the first time in years, he felt the possibility of reconciliation, of a second chance at what truly mattered, family. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The following morning, Alexander woke with a restless mind. Sleep had offered no escape from the whirlwind of yesterday. Memories of Elena's calm authority and Elisa's piercing gaze lingered, mixing with flashes of regret over the years he had missed. He dressed quickly, unable to wait any longer to speak with them again. The office could wait. Today was about rediscovering a family he hadn't even known existed. He drove through the city streets, rain lightly tapping on the windshield, each drop echoing the racing thoughts in his head. When he arrived at Elena's apartment, he found her in the kitchen, quietly preparing breakfast. Elisa was perched at the table, sketchbook open, absorbed in her drawings. For a moment, Alexander simply stood at the door, taking in the domestic scene, so ordinary, yet so foreign to him. "Alexander," Elena said, without turning, her voice calm but carrying that same weight that had made him respect her all those years ago. "You're here early." I couldn't wait," he admitted, stepping inside. "I need to understand everything. I need to know her, my daughter, and I need to make this right." Elisa looked up from her sketchbook, studying him intently. It's not just about saying the right things, Dad. You missed so much already. You can't just step in and pretend the years didn't happen. Her words stung more than he expected. He nodded, swallowing hard. I know. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust. I don't want to lose this chance again. Elena finally turned, her expression softening slightly. He's sincere, Elisa. He's not perfect, but he wants to be here. That counts for something. Elisa's eyes softened, though a hint of caution remained. Then show me, she said simply. Actions speak louder than words. For the rest of the morning, Alexander and Elisa spent time together, tentatively exploring the bond that had been denied to them for so long. He helped her with breakfast, listened to her stories about school and friends, and even laughed at her dry humor. Each shared moment, small as it was, began to bridge the gap of years lost. Elena watched them quietly, sensing the subtle changes. There was still tension, still unspoken questions, but a foundation was forming. Alexander was learning patience, and Elisa was cautiously opening her heart. By noon, Alexander realized that rebuilding their relationship would be a long journey. But for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope that the family he had lost could, in some form, be restored. As he left their apartment, he turned to see Elisa waving, a tentative smile on her face, and Elena standing behind her, eyes unreadable but thoughtful. The drive back to his office felt different. The city passed by in a blur, but inside, Alexander carried a new purpose, one that had nothing to do with power, status, or appearances. It was about family, about trust, and about reclaiming the love he had once taken for granted. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of direction that no corporate victory could ever give him. Days passed, and Alexander found himself drawn deeper into the life of Elena and Elisa. Each visit brought new challenges, new emotions, and a growing awareness of just how much he had missed. The bond between father and daughter was fragile, yet it had a spark that neither of them could ignore. Elisa was cautious, testing him with small challenges, teasing him with questions about the life he had led, the decisions he had made, and the moments he had lost. Alexander answered honestly, sometimes stumbling, sometimes faltering, but always with sincerity. One afternoon, he accompanied Elisa to her art exhibition at a small gallery downtown. The walls were covered with her sketches, portraits, cityscapes, and abstract works that revealed both talent and a depth of emotion that Alexander recognized instantly. Standing beside her, he felt a swell of pride he had never anticipated. Guests whispered about the resemblance between the young artist and the CEO, noting her poise, her intelligence, and the undeniable spark in her eyes. Elena observed quietly from the corner, her gaze alternating between Alexander and Elisa. She saw the genuine pride in his eyes, the careful attention he paid to every detail of Elisa's work, and the protective way he subtly positioned himself near her in the gallery. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine that the years of distance could be repaired, that their fractured family could begin to heal. After the exhibition, the three of them walked through the quiet streets, the evening air cool and crisp. Elisa spoke freely now, sharing dreams and plans, laughing at Alexander's awkward attempts at humor. Alexander listened, occasionally sharing stories of his own childhood, stories he had never shared with anyone. With each passing moment, walls crumbled, and trust began to take root. Back at Elena's apartment, Alexander found a quiet moment to speak privately with her. I know I can't make up for all those years, he said, his voice low and earnest. But I want to be part of her life now. I want our family, even if it's different from what it could have been. Elena studied him for a long moment, weighing his words, seeing the sincerity etched into every line of his face. Finally, she nodded slowly. Then start by being consistent. Show her, show me. Actions, not words. Alexander smiled, a mix of relief and determination flooding through him. He knew it would be a long road, filled with trials and the lingering ghosts of the past, but he was ready. He had a second chance, a chance to rebuild a family, to reclaim love, and to create memories that had once seemed impossible. That night, as he left their apartment, he glanced back at the warmly lit windows, where Elisa waved goodbye and Elena smiled softly. For the first time in years, Alexander felt the stirring of a future that was truly his own, a future where love, trust, and family were at the center, and nothing else mattered. The chapter of regret had ended, and a new chapter, full of hope, was just beginning.